North Carolina has always had a rich musical heritage, and we're proud to be a part of such a great treasure.
Join Brooke and I as we talk to some of our favorite musicians, some good friends from our home state of North Carolina. Hear their story and see how bluegrass music has shaped their lives and their career.
Welcome to another Carolina Sessions. We are so glad to have a great friend and a huge innovator in the music world as far as the banjo goes. We just love her to pieces. We welcome Kristin Scott Benson. How are you doing, Kristen?
Good to see you guys.
You too. Thank you for being with us today.
We're glad to be here.
Well, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about growing up, what area you grew up in, and the people that kind of got you started?
Sure. I grew up in Union, South Carolina, and my grandfather, my mom's dad, Darin, you probably knew of them, the Briarhoppers, Whitey and Hogan and the Briarhoppers. Hogan was my grandfather, and he played mandolin and sang with Whitey, and they were a brother-style duet, really kind of predating bluegrass and that brother style that you think of, like the Louvin brothers and people like that. And so they were professional musicians, and they made a living doing that in the 40s on WBT. They had a radio show. And then after that, kind of the golden days of those radio shows ended, and they all, spread out and got different jobs, but they kept the Briarhoppers alive. So when I grew up, my grandfather was still playing with his band, and then my dad just really liked music. He didn't do it professionally or anything, but so I had both sides interested in it. So this is probably the same with you guys. I just grew up always hearing it. Bluegrass was just always there. No memory without bluegrass. So I started playing mandolin when I was 5 because it's little, right? And we had one. So that was my start, but I didn't really get serious about playing until I was about 13 and started playing the banjo.
So who taught you like the first couple licks and stuff on the banjo?
On the banjo. So that's a little bit longer answer than you may think. I got one of those short banjos. You guys know the kind that have it's basically a C banjo. So the neck, the stops where you would capo on the 5th fret and C. So the neck's only about this long. I was maybe about 9, and a guy named John Culbreth, who taught everything. He taught banjo, mandolin, guitar, fiddle. He could teach anything. And he got me started, but we only had the banjo about a month, and then our house burned down. Oh. And of course, that was in the house, and it certainly wasn't a priority to get that. Once we started rebuilding. So it was later when I got, a full-size banjo, could actually start taking lessons. But John Culbreth did show me the first things, and he was also my mandolin teacher for years. So he was very foundational. And then when I got a banjo, I started taking lessons at the 5th String music store in Greenville. And the guy there was named Darin Brooke. And he taught me for at least a year, I think, and I pretty much knocked out, a lot of the standards that you play. And then I started taking from his teacher, which we've learned is everybody's teacher. If you grew up in the upstate of South Carolina and you played the banjo, probably you took lessons from Al Osteen. So Al and I did lessons for years.
And he taught so many down there, didn't he?
He taught everybody. Basically, if you played, for 40 years. So I have students now who are our parents' ages, and they took from Al. So yeah. And I have students who probably the youngest that he taught that I have is about 18. But the point is, it was a constant in this area for him to be a teacher. So he really molded a lot of the bluegrass scene. I remember him saying jokingly, we need a guitar teacher, we need a mandolin teacher. I've, made all these great banjo players in this area, and there's nobody for him to play with. I can remember him thinking that. This is a little bit true, though. He was a real force in this area.
Right, and he passed a few years ago, right?
Yeah, he died of colon cancer, and that's the reason I even started teaching. I had been reluctant to do it, and he passed, and all these students were displaced and didn't have anybody. And so a few of them called me, and I thought, well, I'll just do that, just do them, because, they lost their teacher, and we had him in common. And then teaching nowadays, as you well know, what a blessing that I had grown a teaching business all these years, because right now with the virus, it's all any of us have.
Right.
Well, Al would be proud of you for taking that task on and continue to do what he started. So
Yeah, he was a great guy. And these days, are you teaching mainly online, Darin, or is it in person, or
I
both?
do a few online, but most of them still come to my studio over there across town from here.
Mm-hmm.
It's big enough that we can stay apart but still pick together,
Oh yeah, that's great. See, I would say 80 or 90% of mine are online, which
Yeah.
is a lot different, but technology is great that way. I've got students in Australia and Europe and Canada and West Coast, and it works remarkably well. I'm really surprised. Again, I was reluctant, both of us, Wayne and I both were reluctant to try Skype lessons. And then we did it a few times, and we thought, this works pretty great. But you can't play together, so that is a huge element that isn't there.
Right. Well, tell me about like a couple of your first band situations, or getting to pick with a lot of people in a group setting, or some venues down that way. I know that you did with your teacher there with Al, but it's different when you get people together, I guess, that's your age or just a little older than you, and start jamming and playing. Can you give us some thoughts on that?
Sure. I really didn't find anybody my age. So when I was maybe 15 or 16, my best friends were 30-year-old men, because the group we fell in with to play with, they were largely based in the Easley, Anderson, South Carolina area. So we had about an hour and a half to get to anybody that we knew that played. And we would go to weekly jam sessions there. And then you know how it is, you get a little group together that like to play together. So if there was a festival nearby, everybody would go and we would jam. And that was so much fun. Still some of the best times of my life. I'm still in touch with a lot of those guys. And my parents, thank you, Lord, for my parents. I mean, they would drive me to festivals and to these jam sessions and to lessons and pay for the lessons and buy a banjo. I mean, they were just so supportive, and really, really thankful for them and how they enabled all of that. But anyway, the first band I was in was a gospel group called Furman Voice and Harmony Express. I don't know if you guys ever ran across them, but we played churches. Just 2 or 3 churches a weekend. So that was the first group I was in. And then my senior year in high school, I was still obviously living in Union, South Carolina, going to school, but I can't even remember how exactly it happened, but I ended up joining Petticoat Junction, which was an all-girl band that Andrea Roberts ran. And it was her and Sally Jones and Gail Rudisill. So I did that my senior year of high school, and then moved to Nashville to go to college at Belmont. And shortly, my first day of my sophomore year in college, I missed to play my first day with Larry Stevenson. So I'll never forget that, because it was September 1st, 1995, and it was day 1 of school that year, and I missed it. We played Thomas Point Beach in Brunswick, Maine. The next day, we played in Long Creek, South Carolina. So that was my introduction to road life, was Maine to South Carolina overnight.
wow.
But it was fun.
With Larry Stevenson?
That's right, yeah.
And I guess that's when I first met you, was in the late 90s. You was playing with Larry.
Because you were with Country Gentlemen. So we saw you guys quite a lot. It was you and Greg and
Ronnie Davis played bass most of the time.
Yeah.
Let Mike Street come on and picked up about a year or so with us, and Les Deaton also did.
Yeah, I remember Les because Wayne knew Lester growing up. So when I kind of knew him already. So I remember when he joined the band, we played. I played with, Reagan Riddle with Primitive.
Oh, yeah.
I played with his daughters and Becky and Sonia from the Isaacs when I was in high school too. We played the Hominy Valley Festival.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you guys played there and Les was with y'all that night.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we did a lot of gigs together there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit, being from South Carolina, and the Reno style of banjo is always huge, but you was pretty close to that growing up, I guess, right?
Yeah, not a lot of people know that Don lived in Buffalo, which is just right beside Union. And I don't know if he ever lived in Spartanburg, but I know he was on a radio show in Spartanburg for a lot of years. And the upstate actually has a pretty rich bluegrass history that has somewhat gotten lost. And, I would say after maybe the 50s, things started dying down. And it really felt kind of like a dry spot growing up in this area playing bluegrass. Nobody would assume that. But like I said, we could go an hour and a half up to where I'm closer to Charlotte now, where we live. But we could go an hour and a half up to Charlotte and find people. We could go an hour and a half the other way toward Anderson and Greenville and find some people there. But there really wasn't much in the Spartanburg area, at least that we were aware of. And the one tradition that still seemed alive, though, was Reno-style banjo playing. And I know that he had a huge impact on the upstate when he lived here. And, I'm writing a book for the Hal Leonard Company. This is my second book for them. And I did a bunch of research on Reno for part of it. And he was, he was an extraordinary stylist. And what people don't realize, though, is how, because I'm mainly a Scruggs player, Earl Scruggs is the go-to for me, and I've spent my whole life trying to get better at it. There's that dog. There he is. That is a man after my own heart right there, Mr. Otis.
He's
He's the best. Come here, Fisher. You probably won't come right now. Come here. I would show you mine. But anyway, he is, what I love about Otis is he seems, his expression, he just looks like he's so full of himself.
He is.
He is. Well, it's accurate. Good. They should all be. They should all think the world revolves around them.
That's right. I was grabbing him because he was barking. So.
Oh, that's so good. He's great. But anyway, people may not realize how close the trajectory was for bluegrass banjo to go more of a Reno way.
Yeah.
Because Reno, had he joined Monroe's band when he had the chance instead of enlisting in the Army, then the first bluegrass sound we may have heard could have been Don Reno's banjo playing,
right,
with Bill Monroe. And you just look at the early bluegrass sequence of events, that could have changed a lot of things. So you have this guy who was very much a contemporary of Earl, who played so drastically different than Earl played. And he was from this area. My dad was the biggest Don Reno fan in the world. So I grew up playing a lot of Reno because my dad would say things like, if you learn this Reno tune, as close as you can get to him, I'll take you to Dahlonega, Georgia, or whatever. So he would bribe me with Reno tunes. And I grew up very much aware of Reno's influence. And although he is a huge figure that a lot of people know about, I think maybe he's due more credit even still than he, in this area he gets it, but I wish it was a little bit more widespread, because he was absolutely phenomenal. I can't do it. I'm not a natural Reno player, and if you really try to sound authentically that way, few people can do it. It's very hard to sound really like Don Reno. So I always sound Scruggsified. Every Reno tune I play is kind of a Scruggsified version of it.
Yeah, it is hard. I can't do it either. I was actually teaching somebody yesterday, and they was talking to me about it, and I was trying a little bit of that, but yeah, it don't come out real good.
The roles are so different that if you've been, if you're a diehard Scruggs player, you just have that so imprinted in your mind. You start trying to play the rolls the way I can emulate the single string and the brush stuff way better than the rolling. That's the part that gets hard.
Right. Well, how long was you with Larry's band?
2 different stints, 5 years, from 95 to 2000. And then, I left, played with Larry Cordell during that time, went back for 2 years, which would have been, let's see, I joined the Grascals in 08. So it would have been 06 to 08. So it's a total of 7 years.
Right. And you did a short stint with Sally, her band.
Yes, that's what I left Larry's band to do. We did a band called Sally and the Sidewinders, and it was, of course, Sally Jones and Mickey Harris and Cody Kilby and myself.
Right.
And I really loved that band. We didn't last because it's hard for young bands to not let life and the attraction of bigger, more established bands kind of pluck you apart.
Right.
That's just kind of a conundrum that every young band faces. But I really loved that group. I loved the material that we did, and we were just all really young, and we had a whole lot of life in front of us. Sally, had twins right at the tail end of that. Mickey went to work with Rhonda. Cody went to work with Ricky Skaggs. So it's just a hard thing to keep together when you're that young.
Yeah, I got the chance to come over and pick with y'all at Spigma one year. And thinking about, I think Cody was fixing to leave, and you had talked to me about maybe trying out with the band, wasn't sure what's going on. And I knew Charlie his health wasn't great, and we was wanting to hang on as long as we could there, but I appreciate you asking me to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't have been a tryout. It would have just been, you come try us out and see if you like us good enough to play.
No, we was wanting to do it, but it wasn't long after that Charlie did pass at that time, and I know separate ways for y'all as well. But we played a few shows with you. Remember one in Virginia in particular. We did a high school up there, and y'all was playing.
Oh yes, yeah, that had slipped my mind. I remember that.
Yeah, sure did.
Yeah.
So Larry Cordell, that was a fun gig for you. A little different style there, wasn't it?
It was so fun. The best part about playing with Larry Cordell is you get to play Larry Cordell songs. And as we all well know, I mean, he is absolutely a fantastic songwriter. And so you've got this body of tunes that personally I would never get tired of playing. I mean, whoever gets tired of Highway 40 Blues and Lower on the Hog, I mean, I could start naming songs of his and just spend the rest of the time doing that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a way, he kind of has like a rock and roll approach to everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's genuine and it's authentic and he's real, and he's just a very entertaining guy. So I really enjoyed my years playing with him.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Did you get to record the Skinner songs with him?
That was right before I joined. In fact, when I joined the band, I did have a little bit of culture shock because I joined thinking, I was going into Chord's band, be doing all these Chord songs. And right as I went in, that record was coming out. So we did a ton of that Leonard Skinner material. And that's really the first little bit I was there. We still did some of his songs. We did a lot of that. Yeah. And it was a little bit of a surprise because I didn't know that was on the horizon for the band, but that's a cool record. Oh, yeah. They did it extremely well.
They sure did. I remember Bowie Beach playing guitar, and he had all that stuff just nailed down.
And it was Talbot. Dave Talbot played banjo.
All right, yeah. I'd heard you playing at that time with the band, but I couldn't remember if you recorded or not.
Yeah.
But a few years, and then you got the call from the Grascals. Is that right?
Yeah, I had gone back to work with Larry Stevenson, and I had been there a couple of years. Our son, in fact, when I went back with Larry, Larry called just gosh, Hogan may have only been a week or two old, and said he needed somebody again. And he had a whole lot of work. And it was one of those things that, after Wayne and I were so happy. I mean, he was playing with John Cowan, I was playing with Larry Cordell. So we weren't playing a lot, but when we went to go play, we really liked going to play, but Larry is always going to be Larry Stevenson. Larry Stevenson is always going to be one of the biggest guys in my whole life. I mean, when he hired me and let me join his band when I was that young, that can't be overstated how appreciative I am to him for that. So I really care about him and love him, and he needed somebody, and we had just had a baby, and we thought, gosh, we could stand to have some more work. So it was a really perfect timing. And I remember calling Larry Cordell to talk to him about it. He was like, you know how he is. I can't imitate him. I'm not even going to try, because people who are good at chord are great at it, and I'm not. But he actually encouraged me to do it as well. He said, I feel like you're going to need or want to work more than I want to, because he had other things going on in town and everything. So I rejoined Larry, and it was great. The band at that time was Dustin Benson and Kyle Perkins. And it was like we just picked up where we left off. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But then 2008, that's when I found out the Grascals were going to need a banjo player. And, we did there was a triangle there of banjo players, and we all took one position over. Kenny Ingram left Rhonda and went to Larry Stevenson. I left Larry Stevenson, went to the Grascals, and Aaron McDarris left Grascals and went to Rhonda. So we all just did that. That's the Bluegrass way, isn't it?
Yep, yes, that's right.
It's a small community.
It is. It really is. Yeah. But that was, that was a blast. And I had never worked that much. And in fact, the first year was actually pretty manageable. But years 2, 3, and 4 with the Grascals, it was actually too much, especially for a couple years there. We were gone all the time. And of course, our son was really little, and it was hard. Yeah. And all I could do, there was no teaching, there was no anything else. There was Hogan and the Grascals. And I tried to approach the job in Nashville, because I lived in Nashville about 15 years, but when he was 1, we moved back to the Carolinas. So we've been back here about 12 years. So definitely the majority of my life's been in this area. But I just treated the drive to Nashville the same as they did. So in other words, they were all local. I was only out of towner. So if I could drive 6 hours one way and be home, I had a rule for myself, 6 for 12. And what that meant is, if I could be home for 6 hours with Hogan, I would drive home and see him for that 6 hours and drive back. So it would be 12 hours driving for 6 hours with him. So that was the rule that I had for myself, because so many of those weeks we would get in, say on a Monday, we'd be leaving again on Wednesday. Well, that was easy, but sometimes we get home, and only have a day, and they would all go home and wash clothes, so I would come home too. But it was really hard there for a while to manage that. Now, I wasn't gone all the time, obviously, and when I was here within 24 hours a day. We had slow times of the year that I really got my fill and was able to be with him, but we worked an awful lot back in those early days, and it was hard on everybody, not just me.
Right. Yeah, the Grascals, I mean, it'll go down in history. During that time, it's one of the best bluegrass bands ever, really. I mean, the singing,
yeah,
Jamie, and
that's right. And you know this as you're very well yourself, bands have ebb and flows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like any other thing. And it was a high time, for the band. And we, unfortunately, how these things can go sometimes. So we were working an enormous number of days, but they weren't all quality dates. There were a whole lot of pickup shows where they were trying to grow. We had management and the whole deal, and they were trying to grow us, more in like the more or less the bar market, you know. So we would do a lot of those things. And even though I was the only one out of town, I was the only mom in the band. You know, Smitty was a single dad at the time, and Danny and Jamie kept jobs through that entire time. And even Elle and Terry Eldridge and Jeremy Abshire at the time, they had a lot of freedom to be gone, but they didn't even want to be gone that much. So we eventually had to pull back from that and just say, look, we're going to do mainly bluegrass festivals, you know, performing arts centers, and just kind of reel it back in a little bit and kind of redirect a more funneled approach. And things settled down a little bit after that. But with that being said, it was a great time for the band. Yeah. We had a whole lot of fun. It was a family, truly a family. Bands say that all the time. We were a family. We were together so much, right, on the bus all the time. And Jamie and Elle and Smitty, especially, the three of them together, there's going to be a lot of fun had. Those three guys as a unit.
Both on stage and off stage.
That's mainly off stage. That's right. Yeah.
It showed on stage as well, and they're singing together, and you know, just really Jamie's front man, you know, personality was just
yeah, awesome. He exudes charisma, and you guys manage that with your own band. I have never wanted that, and you want to wave at everybody? But you know, you can't get between a teenage boy and his food. I mean, that, you know, he's gotta be able to eat and drink. But yeah, you guys have that. I never wanted for that, and I've always been really appreciative to be in bands with people who are great at carrying a show, who are great at interacting with people, who are social by nature. All of those things. That's Jamie Johnson. So he was just the perfect face and ambassador for the group, because he thrives on people, and he genuinely loves to be in the center. And that's not a negative thing. Somebody's got to be there. Right. And I was always delighted to be on the side while he was in the center. That suited me fine.
Yeah, he's surely missed, but the Grascals have a great band and lineup right now too.
Yeah, we've got a Carolina boy, another one, John Bryan, who is not far from you guys. He grew up in Boone.
Is that right?
He grew up in Boone. Now he lives in Wilkes.
Okay.
I think it's North Wilkesboro. I never know the difference between.
Right.
Well, he's even closer now to us.
He is. Yeah. Especially the Billy G up there. That's where Billy lives. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Great.
John is fantastic. He's a young guy, and he is just a fantastic singer.
Sure is. Now, you won the Steve Martin Banjo Award here a few years back. That was a big honor, girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a good day. In fact, that would have been, I guess, 18. So a couple of years ago, because it's right around IBMA time that happens, and we're fast approaching. So it would have been a couple of years ago, and that one came from nowhere. And that was sure a nice, wonderful blessing to our whole family. So we were thankful for that.
That was well, we were so happy for you. You know, we've been friends a long time, and to see who had won in the few years, you know, and then you coming in there, it was awesome for the community and for yourself, and just for good bluegrass pickers just like yourself.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. You're always so happy when you come up with people, and we all know how hard we all work at this, and how you have to be creative and figure out ways to keep all the pieces moving along together. When you see one of your friends catch a break like that, it makes you so happy for them, you know, because
for sure.
Yeah, I feel that way with you guys. I mean, y'all have accomplished so much. Few bands even survive. You know, what we were talking about, you know, with the Sidewinders, Sally and the Sidewinders. I mean, you guys started, and you have just grown it and grown and grown and kind of branched out into new directions. It is not an easy thing, what you guys have accomplished.
Well, thank you much. Yeah, we ain't going to give up on each other, are we?
That's the key. If you have a mortgage in common and a dog in common, you're like, hey, we're in this for the long haul.
That's right.
Well, you've been 4 or 5-time IBMA Banjo Player of the Year.
5-time now.
I thought so, yeah.
You very much deserve too. So you
Well, I don't know about that.
well,
But
you really paved the way, you know, for banjo players and female artists too. You know, you're just such an inspiration to all of us. Even though I don't play an instrument as great as you do, like you're just such an inspiration, and your faith, like that all matters. And we appreciate that from you. So, and I know everybody that knows you does. So thank you for that.
yeah, it creates kindred spirits, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get it all the time as well. You get asked about being a female in bluegrass and that sort of thing all the time. And what I just always do is point to the current landscape of young bands in bluegrass, and it's not a rare thing at all anymore. In fact, it's hard to find a band that isn't, that doesn't include women or very young women even. I mean, it's just not a novelty thing whatsoever. And I just always point and say, look at these young bands and how prominent women are among them. So it's becoming a thing of the past, which I'm very, tickled for, because when we started, it was much more unique. It was unique in that there would be sometimes some women who fronted bands, but you didn't really see sidemen, just people playing in a band that, that didn't front it. And that's changed completely. So that's always a good thing to see.
Absolutely. Well, being married to another musician and being a mom, and Wayne playing another band, having his kind of own career, and me and Brooke get to share that, but we get to do it together.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about that. I know folks watching this will want to ask that question and know that.
Yeah, we do get asked about that a lot. And, Wayne and I have just never, first off, we're not like you guys. We're not singers. So we would not really be fronting a band. Wayne is so great. I mean, he could join a jazz trio. I'm not kidding. Like, he is that diverse. And a lot of people don't realize that about his musicianship, because they identify him with Third Time Out, which is amazing bluegrass band that inspired me to want to play. But they very much have their sound. So people associate his mandolin playing with that, but he really could do anything. So I think he would thrive in an all-instrumental setting like that. Not so much for me. I want to be a part of a band, a vocally driven band. That's where I think I fit best. And therefore, we could both, work for the same singers, I guess, but we've really just never had that desire. And as parents, like you said, we have Hogan, and there's an enormous number of days that he's gone, but I'm home, or I'm gone, but he's home. So it would actually right now be a bad thing logistics wise. I mean, it would make our life harder if we were in the same group, because there's all those one-off days where one's here and the other's not. But the hero to our tale has been my mom. And that's the reason we came back from Nashville and lived here. If we were both gone, my mom has just slid in here and taken care of Hogan, and his life has stayed. He's had we've never had to do daycare or hire out, child babysitting or anything. It's just always been us or my mom. And they love each other so much, and I love to see that relationship. And it's allowed Wayne and I to both go play and then come home. And he's getting big now. I mean, he'll be driving a little over a year from now, and then a year and a half after that, it'd be, I guess, 15 and a half in South Carolina, he can drive alone. So he's fast approaching those days, and it'll really feel just nothing short of a blessing and miracle from God if we're able to have a child fully raised, and have been able to both play in different bands the whole time. It's just God paving the way for that and enabling.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's just what you were meant to do. You're calling, and have Hogan too, and he's a blessing in y'all's lives, we know. So
that's right, and we're so thankful that we've been able to manage it. But again, kudos to my mom, because we couldn't do it without her. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And time has flew by. I remember.
Yeah, is it time? That's easy. You guys are easy.
Well, tell us just about, we asked this to everybody, what the Carolina sound, means to you.
Boy,
And
isn't that a good question? What do you guys say? What's your answer to that?
well, it's the drive and everything that, like you said, like Earl laid down to begin with, but Reno had a big force in that, the players too. And that's why we wanted to interview you from South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But you're close enough to North Carolina. I think Bluegrass nucleus is Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, right into your part of South Carolina there. And
Mm-hmm.
that and you get different pockets of that, all across that. From that edge of Virginia, you've got a good sound. From Piedmont, North Carolina, you've got a real good sound. From the Kentucky side, that corner is a different sound.
Mm-hmm.
And just the driving force and the banjo playing and rhythm guitarist is a big part of that sound, I think.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah, you're doing great. I'm going to say something, but
Well,
you're pretty much knocking it out.
But I've loved getting to play with you over the years, and I've done both, playing mandolin and guitar, and we've got to jam in different configurations. You've played with us, and I've played a few things with you over the years.
Yeah.
And we were playing with Dr. Bobby a few times, and
Yeah.
you'd always get with me and said, "Now I'm going to be listening to the guitar. Now you lay it on me."
Absolutely.
Playing too. And the same way, if the banjo and the guitar player is hooked up, of course you got to have great rhythm with the mandolin and the bass player being in there with you. But that, if you're hooked up, taking charge, everybody else is going to come with you.
Man, I love that that answer, because for me, if I had to give like a short answer, especially the North Carolina sound, it would be the original Quicksilver.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a short answer that really embodies all of those things coming together in a powerful way. To me, electric bass is a huge part of that sound. Mm-hmm. When I grew up and saw bands in the 80s, the electric bass really provides a different, just a different stylistic contribution than upright. You can still achieve all of the same things with upright. But I think that early Carolina sound, I say early for me, when I was growing up, most of the bands were using electric bass at the time. So that original Quicksilver band was, I think, a great example of kind of what we're talking about, fused together. It all comes together. And the band that I saw that absolutely killed me was Russell Scott and Curtis, Russell Moore, Scott Vestal, Curtis Vestal with Doyle. That's the band that I saw that I got excited about Bluegrass. So I'd always heard it. Then I saw that group and just fell in love with it. And the things that attracted me to it are very specific to what you're talking about with the North Carolina sound. And it was Scott Vestal's right hand, even though he's from Texas. They were very much in the footprints of that original group. And, you think about banjo, it's Terry Balcom, Jimmy Haley's rhythm, it's Tony Rice. I mean, right. It's that you can almost see a lineage to me, and this integrates that Kentucky area that you're talking about. But to me, I can almost see the trajectory of the New South leads to Boone Creek, leads to the original Quicksilver. I mean, there is a lineage there of bands that you see that sound get more and more focused. And the original Quicksilver band, to me, just defined it. And you're right, though, it's a very regional thing. But when I think Carolina sound, that's what I think of.
Yeah. You bringing up Scott. Now, a friend of mine back in the day there was at, a gathering or party. And I guess he had really met or been around Terry too much. And this was Scott. At that time, this was about the time they joined. And he's like, "Man, you know Terry pretty well." He said, would you introduce me to him a little bit more? I've never really got to talk to him. And he couldn't believe it. He really never got to know Terry that much.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I really want to talk to him. He said, I've never studied somebody as hard as I have Terry Balcom.
Yeah.
And that was Scott Vestal.
That's right. I mean, doesn't that just speak volumes of Terry's playing? And see, after I started playing, of course, I found Terry Balcom, but just because of the age that I was, I remember my parents liking that band, but for me personally, the band I was old enough to actually go see and remember was Scott, Russell, and Curtis. But then you go back to the records before it, and it's so obvious that that Scott Vestal was completely immersed in Terry Balcom's style. And Scott Vestal is otherworldly. I mean, he really is. When you look at his evolution as a musician, he did that Carolina sound, that driving right hand. He did that as well as anybody's ever done it. And then he applied that same authority to all this outside the bluegrass box material on banjo. And now he's, you know, in a whole different world, the stuff that he does. It doesn't mean he couldn't still do the other, but he has really had an interesting evolution as a banjo player to me. And what Scott does, in my opinion, better than anybody in the whole world is play on both sides of the fence, but still have the authority and the attack of a traditional bluegrass player. I think he's better at that than anybody's ever been.
I would agree with you. You can still hear him pull it out on certain people's records, or see him in a different situation, and he can still lay the middle finger down at the first string hard.
At will. It's you know, it's like if he wants to be Earl Scruggs this day, he can be.
Yeah.
If he wants to, whatever he wants to do, it's there available to him. And his style has definitely changed. His right hand has become just you know, if you think about recording, it's just way more compressed and way more mechanical and smooth. And he's just very, and I mean this in a good way, very just machine-like. His precision is so perfect. But that doesn't mean that if he took a notion, if you listen to his cut of like Dear Old Dixie, he plays that, in my opinion, as close to Earl as anybody ever has.
Yeah.
So he's really just this amazing player who has straddled both sides of those fences and is so effective at either, you know, whether he's playing with Sam Bush or John Cowan, all the things he's done as solo records, or put him in a straight setting and he can still do it. He's amazing.
Yeah, we love him too. But, you know, you ride the fence pretty good yourself, girl.
No, I don't know. I'm very much, it depends on, it's all perspective, right? If you put me alongside, you know, a diehard Stanley player, then it may feel like I can move a little bit outside. But look, this shirt, banjo camp, all you got to do to go to know where I fall in the scheme of banjos, go to Bela's Banjo Camp. And I am a Stanley player. You know, it's not at that camp. I mean, the banjo world is so big these days.
It is.
You look at that young crop of players that come to this camp. I mean, there's everybody there. There's bluegrassers to everything else, but there's players there that don't know the first thing, have never listened to bluegrass. They're completely immersed in just in approaching the banjo the same way you may approach a horn. So
right.
The banjo world is huge, and I'm still learning about all these tenor players, plectrum players, clawhammer players. So I appreciate that, but I feel very tucked and nestled in that traditional side of things.
Well, this world that we know of is thankful for you and your playing, your teaching, and your recordings, and I can speak for that.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate y'all, and it's been a lovely time just to talk to you a little bit. I wish it was in person, but these are the days we're living in.
Well, hopefully we can see you soon,
yeah,
hang
we're gonna
out,
make that happen.
maybe fish a little bit with your young man there. And he's been doing that a whole lot and getting really good at it, hasn't Hogan?
Yeah, that's his passion. And, you know, we talked earlier about my parents enabling me to go play. That's our job as parents, enable our kids' passions and support them in that. We're really enjoying doing that for Hogan.
Absolutely. Well, folks, check out Kristin Scott Benson, her on the web. She's got several solo projects out there, and we've got all of them, and her work with the Grascals. Look back at her career, and she's just a wonderful lady, wonderful human. We love her and Wayne and Hogan, and we're thankful that they're our friends.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Y'all have a great rest of the day.
Thank
You
you,
too.
Kristen.
All right. Bye-bye.